Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the gathering room. It is
As ever.
Martha Beck.
Who's Martha Beck?
I'm Martha Beck.
Oh,
What a
that's
coincidence.
I'm Ro.
Also known as Who Is Going to Type It First? Oh, come on.
We can't do this. We can't account for the lag.
That's true. That's true. The gracious badger. All right. So today, let's just wait and see if anyone shows up. Wendy from Guelph. You rock it every
Well
week.
and truly ahead of the
Here
pack
you
tonight.
are, my darling.
Amazing. Amazing. Just us three, Wendy.
Just the three of us.
This will be all right.
That's good.
Be an
This-
intro. Oh, here they
what?
come.
Hi, everybody. Hi,
Cindy,
Christina. Hi, Anne. Hi, Daisy. Hi,
Max,
Cindy.
Christina,
Oh,
Daisy.
so good to see
Hi,
you.
Anne.
Hmm.
People are arriving.
From Dallas and from Esparto. Hello,
Thank
Donna. How you
you.
doing? Jill and Christy and Lucy and Sophie.
So many people.
So many
It's so
peoples.
good to see you guys.
Always.
Oh, you're
Oh,
jumping
who dat?
around. It's amazing.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, Anne Marie. Hi, Wendy. Other Wendy from New Zealand.
Hi, Liz. Lovely to see you.
Yay.
Terry. Oh my gosh, so many wonders.
I know.
I love
so
these
much
guys.
beautifulness.
Makes the heart feel happy.
There's a song I like called Good to Be Alive. And I think you should go listen to it because it makes me feel, I think about that song when we come on the gathering room. It's really good. Andy Grammer, Good to Be Alive. Check it.
I'm gonna get out of here and let you do your thing.
All right.
girl.
All right. I'll do my thing.
Go do your
You like our little recording place we have, we made? Hi, today the topic is waking up the world. But here's the thing, I'm not nearly arrogant enough to think that we're just going to wake up the world all by ourselves here. I'm referring to the fact that I think the world is waking up person by person by person. Last week I talked about some of the experiences of the mystery that I remember having. And people responded really positively. And I'm always a little surprised because when I first had those experiences, the culture was a little different. And you didn't get such a great response to that stuff out in the world at large. But I think that the world is waking up. So I told you how after I came out of that experience, that I had several experiences, but two big ones were when I was pregnant and I felt like there was a being of love there with me. And then again, I saw a white light during a surgery and it came and communed with me. And after those experiences, my reaction was to always live in such a way that I was conscious of the presence of that light with me. I believed with all my heart that it is always with all of us, but we're unaware of that when we cloud our own vision with fear, with fantasies of vulnerability, of just fear. It's always either love or fear, right? So anything related to fear, and that includes anger and sadness and all the negative emotions, they cloud over our sight so that we don't see that this light is with us all along. And when we do see it, the experience of love and wholeness and home and safety is inexpressibly strong, and it's what we all are at our heart. So I tried to live in such a way that the light, that I was always conscious of the light, even if I didn't physically, visually see it. And all my actions were sort of guided toward that. And it made me make odd choices, like quitting my job and my career in academia right after I had that experience. And then going on to a lot of sort of culturally anomalous decisions. But the thing that I resisted the most was that after about 15 years, I started to feel compulsively drawn to books about enlightenment and people who were enlightened. Now, in our culture, we have the Enlightenment refers to a whole period of history when people actually adopted the scientific perspective. So it was a revolution out of the dark ages of being dominated by this very fundamentalist religious perspective. So the Enlightenment was actually coming away from religion and into science and into philosophy and into the mind, that's a really good thing. I mean, fundamentalist religions, wherever we find them, tend to repress kind of everything. They kind of become the opposite. In Buddhism, they have something called the near opposite of virtue, and the near opposite of compassion is pity. The near opposite of self-love is self-pity. Well, the near opposite of spirituality is fundamentalist, aggressive, homicidal religion. So you have that sense of enlightenment in the Western world, but in Asia, where I first lived when I was like 20 years old. I lived in Singapore and went to this Chinese language immersion university. And without even knowing it, I soaked up a lot of Asian perspective. And when you learn a language, you soak up a lot of the ways that language has been framed in the mind. And the Asian mindset is really, really different from the Western mindset. So in the West, we believe that you're born imperfect. And you can see this with like parenting. Here comes this little plasma pet. And by gosh, we're going to play baby Einstein things. We're going to, stimulate the baby in all these ways and make him grow up to be a genius. Turns out not all those things work. And I'm not going to say anything about it here because I don't want people to sue me. Anyway, you have this baby who's a tabula rasa, a blank slate, and you try to make it a perfect person. And everything you do is not quite enough, not quite enough, not quite enough. So we have phenomena like self-loathing, belief in original sin, which is the whole Christian world of the Middle Ages, kind of starts out by saying you are a filthy piece of crap and you have to be good to be saved. Well, in Asia, the belief is that everything comes from an original perfection. Everyone is part of that original perfection, and that the way we get divided from our perfection is not by original sin, but by accumulated errors, illusions, mistakes, innocent mistakes in the mind. Now, a lot of this I've seen a lot of fundamentalist Buddhist behavior too, people who really believed that if I just burn enough paper money and offer oranges to the souls of my ancestors, I'll have good luck for the rest of my life. I was writing the other day, and I was writing about how our own assumptions seem normal to us, and other people's assumptions can seem so normal to them, but so if you're from a different culture, they can seem so odd. And I was looking up instructions for how to properly worship one of the Hindu deities. And it was talking about make sure that you get the right picture of your deity or the right idol so that you can memorize what the idol looks like. Because if you can't picture the idol well enough, you won't be able to make progress. And it suggested getting an idol off the internet or asking a friend if they have an extra, which I thought was just, it's delightful. It's delightful that people can be so different and have such different but equally deep assumptions, right? Okay, so Asia is not perfect either, but there is this belief that we are born innocent and we are born pure, and then illusion builds up, and it's by going back into the stillness of our original selves that we wake up. And this is the meaning of enlightenment in that Asian context. So when I started reading about this, I felt very uneasy, because one of the first things you learn if you ever do meditation or read a meditation book or anything like that is that you never ever aspire to awakening, to being enlightened. It's just too high a goal. There's a Buddhist saying that, okay, if you took a mountain the size of Mount Everest, and then every century a hawk flew across the top of the mountain carrying a silk scarf in its beak, and it just brushed the top of Mount Everest every 100 years. In the time it took to wear that mountain down flat because of the silk scarf, that's how many lifetimes it will take you to be enlightened. Like, give up. As Ram Dass said once, am I going to be enlightened in this life? No. Okay, now you can relax and get into your meditation. So 5 years ago, when I started finding myself drawn to books on enlightenment, I had a really strong bias against it. It seemed like spiritual arrogance. It seemed impractical. It seemed wrong-headed. But then I noticed this very, very strong correlation between me feeling intensely anxious and horrible when I would not read those books, and when I'd finally break down and read some of them. And it was the strangest thing. I was ordering books from the internet that they didn't have pictures on the cover, that I didn't know the authors, the titles. There's one called Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. Okay, but that doesn't say anything about awakening in the title. I don't know why. I was just like, I bought this book. I don't know why. I'm not sure if it came up on a search or anyway, you open it up and it's this guy who had a very profound awakening experience. He was a psychiatrist, and he had this awakening experience. His name was David Hawkins, and kept it secret for 35 years because he said nobody would understand this. And basically this light came and then it stayed with him. And he went into this place of understanding that what he is in his essence is just a portion of the God force. And that, as I said in the end of the last episode of The Gathering Room, we're all part of Indra's web, like we're all the perfection of the universe reflected in each other. And he lived in that and had that odd sense of his body doing things and he wasn't sure what it was going to do. He became wildly successful as a psychiatrist, but never told anyone why. And then he finally wrote this book that said it wasn't worth writing about this experience until recently because almost no one had it. And the people who did have this experience didn't come back. I mentioned this last week too. They just stayed dead, or they just went away into the spirit realm and their bodies died. But he said now it is becoming statistically significant. There's going to be a rise in the number of people experiencing this. If you've read Eckhart Tolle's books, The Power of Now, and especially A New Earth, that's his hypothesis too. He had this awakening experience, no more suffering experiences. Everything is now, everything is the God force. And he also says more people are going to wake up now. My own experience was that I came at it from a lot of interesting angles, obsession with Asian philosophy, obsession with sociology and psychology, obsession with ecology and animals, obsession with what are we going to do about climate change, obsession with shamanism and practices of the mystery in traditional cultures. And these were all passions I'd had since I was born, and I didn't know that they were connected. But as I went through this period of obsessive reading, I had to drop my disbelief that a lot of people are going to wake up. And today I was reading a book that Byron Katie and Stephen Mitchell, her husband, have just completed, and it's not published yet. And it's Katie commenting on the words of Jesus. So Stephen reads Katie some parts of Jesus's words, and she says what she thinks about them. And one of the things she says in the book is that she went out into the desert after her own awakening, and she worked through every problem that every human being could have. She felt like she had to solve the deepest, darkest problems of humanity. And every time she did that, she felt like she was waking up the whole, because there is only one thinker. And here's the thing, it rings so true to me that there is only one thinker, and that when she's out there in the desert solving her own problem and she gets that bit of illumination, all of us wake up. So here's an analogy. Our brains are centered in our heads. If we lose even part of the brain, we're pretty much dead. But a plant, where is plant? There. A plant has a different kind of consciousness and a different kind of brain. And a plant's brain lives in its root tips. The tips of the roots of a plant are all like neurons in our brain, and they're very dispersed. But when one root contacts a substance that is good for the plant and takes it in, potassium or something. The whole plant benefits, right? So they say now that the internet is a consciousness much like the root system of a plant. So as a species, each of us using the internet right now is becoming part of, you could look back to Norse mythology, the world tree. The tree is a great world. The world is a huge tree. And each of us is a root tip. Each of us on the internet connecting. We have become like the plant brain of the universe. And every time one of us reaches out and takes in some kind of nurturing or solves a problem or awakens to something, you can awaken to some ideas and not to others, I think, the whole being starts to benefit. And yes, there are dark things, there are despots, and there are evil people, and there are murderers and tyrants, and there is much cruelty and wrong. And we all get affected by that as well. But there's always been a lot of that in the human population. Always. There's actually less violence per capita right now in the world than there has ever been per capita. And I think there are more people waking up. And I think that we come to the gathering room in places like that because we can feel each other's awakening. And I've been feeling it all week, thinking about last week and how you guys responded to that idea that we could live as if we could see the light, as if we were enlightened, as if we were awake. And so I just wanted to put that out, and it's a theme that I want to keep pursuing here because it's the basic premise behind this gathering room, is that if we can contact each other as we try to awaken, each of us will gain from all the others momentum toward enlightenment. So will it happen in this lifetime? I don't know. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and I'm certainly not enlightened, but by God, I'm going to try. I'm going to die trying. So that's what I have to say about that. And now I'd like to see any questions.
Alrighty, I'm gonna
that you lovely people may have as the root tips of the plant brain.
There's a lot of people loving you and loving the light, I can tell you that.
The light is loving us back, I can tell you that.
Okay, Christina's pointing out that trees share nutrients across the forest like what we are doing right now.
Yeah, they are social, they communicate, they sacrifice for their young. They're amazing. I'm writing a novel about plant consciousness pretty soon.
Donna's just pointing out that when the gathering room is on, her two dogs come closer.
The animals, they're all helping us. They're helping us. Kittens are performing on YouTube to make us that much closer to enlightenment. Today I watched a story on Facebook about a tiny cow who was rescued in Hurricane Harvey, and a rescued pit bull did bring the cow back to life and become her mother, and they love each other. And I did wake up just that little bit more.
Anne says, are you saying that we are the roots of the life tree where our essence travels through the tree? At the top of this tree, we receive the light.
That's very interesting. I guess we could be the leaves as well. Maybe we're everything. Maybe some of us are leaves who receive the light from above, and some of us are root tips that go down and find the nutrients in the earth. Some of us are more airy-fairy and into having like spiritual experiences and visions, and some of us dig down and do the research here on earth. And it's the same enrichment. It can come from all angles, but I love that. I love to extend a metaphor. So thank you, Anne.
People are digging hard on the metaphor. I just want to put Abdullah's here, and he says, wow, so what I've been feeling lately is real and not just in my head.
Abdullah, isn't it like to meet other people and have them say, yeah, me too. It's like, because I'm not very social. I don't often leave the house. I lived in the woods for the last 6 years, and all of this kind of came to me out in the forest, and then to come back in, and like last week, I'm telling you about these experiences, and everybody's going, yeah, I'm kind of on the same wavelength, and it blows my freaking mind. And I'm so grateful that you said that, Abdullah, because that tells me one more person waking up for me. for me. And I do for you, and she does for us, and it's all mutually beneficial, all for all, always.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that.
Dottie wants to know, what's your favorite exercise for waking up?
I do like internet videos of animals, but there just is no beating stillness meditation, and it's horrible at first, and then it becomes unbelievably powerful to open the door.
So then let me follow up with what Laurie's saying, which is there's so many paths and so many ways of meditating. How do you choose one?
What I did is just shop around until you find one that works. I loved, I think it's an audio program. It's called The Inner Art of Meditation by Jack Kornfield. It's like regular Kornfield, but with a K. That was really the product that got me deeply into the practice that most affects me, which is Vipassana. And then I became very, very starved for meditation at a certain point and started doing it really hard. I haven't been as much lately, but I go to whatever practice works for me. Lately, it's been painting. I paint way more than I think I should. But
she paints beautifully, by the way, for those who don't know.
There's this drunkenness that comes over me when I'm painting, and it's this pure creative joy. That's a practice too. Walking in the woods, unbelievable. They're so simple, and the place I learned the most was when I was too sick to get out of bed, and it's so beautiful that when everything's taken away from you and all you can do is lie there, if you're in prison, if you're ill, if you're dying, if you're somehow held captive, the one thing you can do is the only thing that really matters, the one thing that can take you all the way back home. And when I've been healthy enough to run around and pursue more worldly goals, I have not gained ground as quickly as when I was supposedly restricted, but actually given an opportunity. Yesterday, I was just like feeling really hammered and battered, and my eyes weren't working. I was trying to read this book, and I thought, I just need some eye drops, then I'll be able to continue. And I went and got some eye drops, and I put something in my eye. It was in a bottle that looked like eye drops, but it was actually something you add to water to like kill every bacterium known to man. It hurt. Like I had a bottle of water in my hand, and I just literally poured the bottle of water into my eye. Oh, it was bad. It was really bad. And then I went back, and this eye is swollen shut, and I'm like, and I thought, I am being told to be still. I am being told to get back inside my body, to listen to what it's telling me, to feel the truth of now until I can find the feeling of the light. And then it took about a minute because I practiced so long. But sometimes my root is pain, physical pain. Eckhart Tolle uses the present moment now. And he says there are portals, different portals. Reading is a big one for me. Lots, music. They're everywhere.
I have a wonderful question here from Tricia, who says, would you please comment on explaining waking up to loved ones who are threatened by the idea?
I wouldn't. There's a good story about a woman she's from like Detroit, and she went to Thailand or somewhere and became a nun, shaved her head, wore a yellow robe or whatever they wear. And then she went home and she wore a yellow robe. She refused to eat bratwurst and chicken wings. She wouldn't watch football. She wouldn't drink beer, and her family hated it. They hated her. So she went back to her monastery, and she went to her teacher and said, I went back and my family hated me as a Buddhist nun. And the supervisor, I don't know what they call nun supervisors in that order, but she said, well, why don't you just go be with your family? Like, do what they do. It'll be fine. It's not like Buddhists are very mellow about this compared to, say, I don't know, Mormons. No alcohol or coffee ever. Anyway, so she said, go and break the rules. It'll be fine. So then the next year, the woman went home, put on a pair of blue jeans and a t-shirt, watched football, drank beer, ate wings, meditated inside, and her family felt the love and gentleness that had come into her. And without the judgment of that fundamentalism, she was just this huge heart that had never been opened before. And they just fell in love with her. The whole vacation or holiday was like this amazing love fest. And she went back to her supervisor and she said, well, my family hates it when I'm a Buddhist, but they love it when I'm a Buddha. So that's what I would suggest is, unless someone asks what you're doing, come here and talk to the other people who are obsessed with this, because to anyone else, it actually makes no sense, or it's frightening. It's actually very threatening to people's egos. So yeah.
All right, well, let me push you then. What about if you didn't have the threatened by the idea aspect? What's still a layman's definition of waking up that we can use?
I would probably say, well, I'm doing this now. I mean, the book I'm writing right now is The Integrity Cleanse. And what I would tell people is I'm trying to stay in really, really, really perfect integrity, to be aligned body, mind, heart, and soul with what I perceive to be the truth in any given moment. And I'm trying to be really scrupulous about that because it works well. So an airplane that's in structural integrity works. When it's out of structural integrity, it crashes. I don't want to be out of structural integrity. I've crashed enough for one life. I would like to fly smoothly. So I'm really trying to get to the truth of things, mentally, physically, emotionally, and if people believe in it, spiritually. And who can say that's not a good idea? Like, who could say that? I don't know. Once I made a New Year's resolution not to lie for a whole year, and everyone at the New Year's Eve party said that was a very bad idea. And then by the end of that year, they were not my friends no more.
Jessica says, is it normal for waking up to come in spurts? Some days I feel like I've got it, and other days it's like I've taken a step backwards.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole, especially in India, you get this tradition of one bang, or even in Japan, they talk about satori, this vision that comes, a switch of perspective. And Nisargadatta Maharaj says the fruit ripens and ripens and ripens as we pursue enlightenment, and then one day the fruit drops. And so it gets heavier and it hangs lower, and sometimes it might even touch the ground. If you know, like an apple tree, the apple might touch the ground. But one day it's so ripe that it just falls. And then it's like Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie. It's a one-way process. You can never go back. You can slide back into human patterns, I believe. I don't think there's anything that takes away the human agency of choice. I just think that once you've seen something that delicious and been in that state, the motivation to do whatever it takes to stay there is very, very, very intense. So it's almost as good as a done deal. I also think it may have something to do with epigenetics. Epigenetics are these switches that turn on genes or turn them off so that different qualities are expressed in the genome. So for example, we all have the gene to have hair all over our bodies, and some people, but it's turned off. In some people, especially in parts of Mexico, the gene is turned on and they have soft fur all over their bodies like a cat. And you should Google it, it's very interesting. But under certain conditions, epigenetics can switch, like trauma can switch an epigenetic, like toggle switch, and it can make a genetic change that is passed down to the offspring. I think that the way enlightenment is expressed and described by people who've been through it feels to me like an epigenetic switch. I don't know. I may be wrong. Anyway, the point is that yes, the more we pursue it, the more we think about it, the more we dive into it, the more we meditate on it, the more we talk to each other about it, the riper the fruit becomes. And if I ever fall from the tree, you'll be the first to know.
Well, do we have time for one more?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've got Donna here who says, how do we not get saddened by others who mock such enlightenment discussions or mock us? I get called woo-woo, which doesn't bother me as much as the longing to be around those we want to engage in considering awakening.
This is one reason I really like meditation, because it makes you very much the witness of your own emotions. And after you've witnessed enough of your own ego at work, then when other people's egos are at work, you don't look at them and say, oh, there's a person that is threatening me. You can feel that in your ego and you can say, oh, interesting. The egoic part of me feels threatened. And oh, look at this poor sad person doesn't think there's any possibility of that. Like, and you see that they might feel very superior about sneering at spiritual fulfillment, but you can look right at them and see how much pain they're in. It's not, I mean, they're not, no, it's not fun to believe that life is a bitch and then we die and that's all there is to it, you know? Everybody walks around like Hamlet going, I don't know, to be or not to be. That is the question. And what fun is that? So they can laugh at me all they want. I don't care. I've got this brilliant white light shining on me, filling me with love. And over here is some poor miserable person going, it's just not true. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say, peace. And sometime maybe they will be the one who gets so miserable that they actually fall from the tree abruptly.
Yeah.
It can happen. And I do believe that there are people to whom it is sort of destined to happen because time isn't linear. That's a whole nother discussion. But I think maybe a bunch of us agreed to wake up at this time in history because I think we're still going to keep the earth habitable. And I don't see a way to do it if we're not awake. So all of us this week, as we go about our business, like feel each other's efforts to awaken, because every single thing you do toward awakening wakes us all. And we can all start to build on each other's momentum and rest in each other's strength when we feel weak. And so by sharing this experience, we can accelerate it and we can bring it into each of our lives faster and more beautifully. So that's what I have to say about that. I love you all madly. And if you fall from the tree this week, please let me know somehow, probably by writing info@marthabeck.com. I am awake. I am enlightened.
Here's the info.
Here is the 411.
The apple has fallen.
Boom. So, we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us on the Gathering Room.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.